In the Lowcountry of South Carolina, the real estate market has seen a 25% increase in the amount of inventory on the market through the end of August 2025. What does that mean if you're a seller that wants to have a successful transaction, a positive strategy, and get to the finish line? Well, we're going to peel back the curtain and get after it, so stay tuned. Here we are about to kick off the last quarter of 2025. Boy, what a year it's been.
Happy fall.
Yeah, happy fall. Here we go. Football season, all that kind of stuff. So today we want to talk about, focus on one stat, two stats in particular of a category that has to do with inventory, real estate inventory in the marketplace. And here's the two stats to note: that year over year through the end of August, and we're about to have the September data come out too, but through the end of August, the number of new listings that have come up on the market, new listings, is up about 10% from where it was this time last year. So that just means that 10% more sellers have come to market. But connected to that is the actual static inventory through the end of August is up 25% from where it was at the end of August last year. So basically, there's just more choices for buyers, which is great for buyers, right? But maybe not that great for sellers, especially when they see there's more competition. They're trying to figure out how to be successful. So today we just want to break down 4 just real conversations of things that we've learned in our practice when we're talking with sellers about how do you prepare to be successful in that kind of environment with building inventory, noting this, and I know we've talked about it a ton, real estate is hyper local, down to the different neighborhoods. There could be some neighborhoods that have really tight inventory, others that have really broad and heavy inventory. So, but these conversations that are coming about are some of us dusting off, some strategies that took place back in a slower market time, and others are new strategies that we've discovered based on the way that buyers and consumers are behaving. So let's get right after. The first one has to do with listing delay, which is that MLS status, sort of a coming soon. Talk to us about sort of how to leverage that when we're talking with sellers about a way that helps them understand a good pathway forward.
Listing delay, we have spoken to this before, but it is a really important status in the MLS because it gives an opportunity for an agent that's tracking inventory for a particular buyer that is honed in on something to find it and discover it and introduce it to the buyer before it technically hits the open market.
Right.
So before it feeds through the IDX, before it hits the Zillows and the Realtor.coms, it goes into this holding tank. And this holding tank is really just meant to it's meant for fairness across the marketplace, but it's to let every agent know that, hey, a listing agreement has been signed, a price has been established, compensation has been established, term has been established. However, the marketing pieces are not together to go to the full market yet.
Right.
So when we throw out a new listing and we put it in listing delay first, it's an awesome way to just kind of dip your toe in the market. Sometimes a seller maybe there's not a good comp to base a price off of, and we're working and we're triangulating and trying to figure out the best place to come to market, but it just hasn't been yet proven. So what happens? You go into listing delay. What happens to the phone? Does the phone ring? Do we start getting agents calling and saying, hey, I really want to go see this. I have a buyer who's been looking for something just like this. Or does the phone not ring at all?
Right.
And it gives us an opportunity to kind of test the market before we actually launch the listing.
Right.
And the cool thing about a listing delay status is you're not accumulating days on market. You can make changes to the list price. And then once you're kind of ready to go, and you launch the listing, you're starting day 1, and this is your price.
Yeah, listing delay kind of gives you a second chance at a first impression in some ways, right? You before you really go to that full active status, which is absolutely your first impression, you get sort of that coming soon first impression. And we're paying attention. Did the phone ring? Didn't the phone ring? Is there interest? Isn't there interest? And what does that look like?
And the other thing is we think about, we're always looking at leverage. How do we help our sellers in this particular situation have some leverage? And if a buyer raises their hand and says, hey, I'm interested in that listing before it hits the open market, usually the offers that roll in off of that are strong.
Yeah. Right.
Because why would a seller come down off their position, their price, before they hit the open market?
Right.
And buyers understand that and their agents understand that. So it's really awesome. You don't have to allow for showings. You don't have to ask for offers while you're in listing delay. But in a lot of situations, when they do roll in, it's positive.
And likewise, on the cricket side, if it's quiet while you're in listing delay, that's a little bit of a head scratcher. Like, well, why is it quiet? Did nobody see it? What's the story? Is this maybe more of a consumer-driven product versus an agent-driven product, et cetera? So it's more of a topic and a discussion point on each deal that's kind of unique. You kind of have to study and evaluate that. And that leads me to the second one, which is we've sort of determined that, especially with the world of technology, the way that people are searching on their devices and looking at real estate, there's kind of two waves of buyers. And we talk to sellers about this. The first wave is that sort of ready, willing, able, and I call it eager. They've looked at everything else that's on the market. They're waiting for the next thing to come on. And that doesn't necessarily, by the way, have to be that it's a super tight market segment, low inventory. They could be in a market with 100 listings. They just haven't found the one they're looking for, but they want to buy right now. So we're always looking at that first wave behavior. And it could be a listing delay. It could be right when you go to active status. There's a lot of properties that still sell in listing delay status. But even when you go to active status, that first wave of buyers, ready, willing, able, eager, they're going to see the listing. They're going to call their agent. There's going to be engagement, but that's probably going to last maybe a couple days, a couple weeks. After that, we just always see it. That's going to kind of peel off. And then you're just in the second wave of buyers, which is just people that are looking. I'm not saying they're tire kickers, but maybe they don't have that same eagerness. Maybe they're not quite as ready, willing, able. And so you find yourself sort of being on the market and waiting for whatever it is that's going to make them more urgent to occur. So that old adage of like your first buyer is your best buyer sometimes is answered by this notion of understanding that first wave of buyers is sometimes critically important. If you want to have some leverage, if you want to be able to get good terms, if you just want to get sold quickly. I mean, I don't know anybody that loves being on the market. We're seeing days on market build and build. I don't know anybody that really loves being on the market in an extended period of time. So we talk to sellers about paying attention to that. And that'll lead us to the third thing, Chris, that we're talking a bit with people about is price repositioning. After you went through the first wave and now you're in the second wave and you're thinking, gosh, how do I accelerate this process? Talk just briefly about the price repositioning, because a lot of sellers think, boy, if I drop the price or I reduce my price, then that looks bad. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily the right conclusion.
Not in this market. It's something that buyers are used to. I mean, I've run stats on current inventory and the percentage of properties that have transacted, did go under contract, or did recently sell. I've looked at the history of those. It's a high. It's greater than 50%. It's usually in the 60% range, where those properties did have to do a reposition before they became absorbed, right? I think that's really, really smart. So we've kind of taken this internally to a different level, and we have really studied markets and studied strategies. How do you maximize that without it looking like a seller is desperate, or because sellers are always worried about that.
Right.
How do you do it in a business sense? How do you do it where it makes sense and it actually achieves results? And we have different strategies for different situations. Maybe this video isn't the place to talk about all of our different strategies, but we do have them. So it's case by case sometimes. It depends on the goals and motivations of our seller. It depends on how the rest of the market is behaving. It depends on how the market is trending. And it takes some thought. It takes a plan. It's not, you won't see, at least we don't just randomly just drop a price a little bit to see what that does.
Right.
Out of curiosity. I mean, it really has to be a plan.
We've seen some of that behavior elsewhere where it's almost sort of gimmicky. Let's drop it 1,000, let's drop it another 1,000 every day, let's drop it 1,000. And one of the things that we pay attention to, we talk to sellers about sort of related to this, not necessarily in the 4 count today, is once you go to market, you're really setting the reputation of your listing. People are paying attention. The freedom of information, everybody's tracking. Oh, that's that house that's been on for 9 months. That's the one that's had 20 different price adjustments. That's the one that's been through a bunch of different agents, et cetera. The reputation is happening. So you got to be smart about what that means and making the right moves on that. And I think that repositioning strategy just has to do with us having learned a thing or two about what actually works, what actually works, given somebody's motivation and all the circumstances.
And a reposition strategy isn't entirely about price.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's another thing that I think gets missed. The strategy encompasses a lot of content of the listing. Mm-hmm. How does the visual strategy look? What's the narrative strategy look like? Yeah. What about our reach? Who are we targeting? Can we fine tune something? Do we need to kind of make a little switch off market and reintroduce the property? There's a lot of things that go through the mix in those brainstorming sessions with our clients that we come up with a recommendation that, hey, this is actually a strategy. This is actually a reposition of your listing. Yeah. And it's so funny. Sometimes when we do that, we'll get a phone call from an agent that says, hey, I just saw this. Mm-hmm. And I've really got a buyer that's been looking for months.
Right.
And it's almost a head scratcher because you're like, well, did you not see it last week?
Well, you're right on target to the fourth point, which is something we call the power of the ping. And the ping being how information feeds onto those devices, right? And what does that do to people? What does that do to agents? What does that do to buyers? What does that do to buyers that have maybe seen the property before, and how we can feed information to them? What does that do for buyers that haven't yet raised their hand, and now all of a sudden do by virtue of our enacting the power of the pinging the market and looking to hear something back is hugely important. Because the last thing you really want to do is just go on the market and just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, because it just breeds frustration. It breeds a bad reputation. It doesn't breed results. And as you've said so many times, a house that's on the market longer and longer doesn't sell as well. And that's just not a successful strategy. So guys, that's just kind of a quick, kind of peel the curtain back on some of the conversations we're having with folks in the living room, just talking about, okay, this is where we are. Let's look at the circumstances, the snowflake uniquely. And let's start talking about these meaningful topics. So hopefully you've enjoyed this today. As always, guys, we appreciate you following us. Appreciate you paying attention to our YouTube videos on a regular basis. Spread the word. Make sure people that want to be attuned to what's going on in the Lowcountry marketplace of South Carolina are paying attention to what we have to say. We'll talk to you guys soon.